Hello and welcome to this online recorded lecture. Today I'd like to continue talking about the Constitution by addressing the concept of separation of powers and checks and balances. First, we'll look at why this was put into place. Then we'll look at the three separate branches, 5 checks, and we'll also address how the Constitution is a living document. It may have been written over 200 years ago, but through the amendment process, it can and has been changed over time. Built into the Constitution is the idea or concept that the government's power needs to be separated into different areas in order to protect our rights. In the upper left, we see the United States Capitol, which is where our Congress or our legislative branch operates. Next to that would be the White House, which was not only where the president lives, but it's where he works. Below that would be our third branch. The Supreme Court operates in this building, and it's our Judiciary. The reason why this was placed into our Constitution is fairly simple. It was designed to protect our freedom and liberty. If one part of the government was attacking our freedoms, then the others could check or stop the actions in order to protect us. Essentially, this was designed to protect our rights as American citizens. Now I'd like to look at the separate branches themselves, who's included, and the job that each performs. The approach I'd like to take would be to fill in the blanks, so to speak, in this chart. First, we'll look at who is included in each of the branches, a quick 2-word description of the job of each, and then we'll look at the ways in which each branch checks the actions or behavior of the others. In this context, the who, in a way, is kind of simple. The executive branch is made up of the president and members of the president's staff. The legislative branch includes both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Collectively, they're known as the Congress. Lastly, the judiciary is made up of the federal courts, and the highest court in the land is the Supreme Court. Each branch has a particular job or function. In many ways, you could quickly describe these jobs in just a couple of words. If we start with the executive branch, it's the job of the president to enforce laws. Sometimes people get confused with this enforcement power that the president has. As the head of the executive branch, the president would direct the Federal Bureau of Investigation to investigate crimes and have people arrested if it's believed that they committed some sort of a crime. The president also would direct the Department of Justice to file charges and prosecute people who have been arrested for different crimes. While the president may enforce laws, it's the responsibility of the legislative branch to write laws. Those laws get written in this building, the United States Capitol. On the left is the chamber where the House of Representatives works. On the right is the United States Senate. Lastly, we see it's the job of the judicial branch to interpret laws passed by Congress in order to ensure that they don't violate the Constitution. Currently, it's the responsibility of these 9 individuals as members of our Supreme Court to interpret laws to ensure that they do not violate the Constitution. I'd like to identify a few checks or ways in which each of the branches can influence or control the actions of the others if one of them seems to be getting out of hand. One way that the president checks the actions of the judicial branch is that if there's a vacancy in the Supreme Court or for a federal judge position, it's the sole power of the president to nominate someone to fill one of those vacancies. Here we see some recent nominees named by President Bush as well as President Obama. In the upper left-hand corner, we see President Bush standing with Samuel Alito. Below him would be President Obama with Sonia Sotomayor. On the right, we see the most recent member of the Supreme Court, and that would be Elena Kagan. While the president has the authority to nominate people to fill vacancies, the legislative branch, in the form of the Senate, checks not only the president, but the judiciary, because the Senate has the power to either confirm or reject each of those judicial nominations.
Earlier in 2016, following the death of Justice Antonin Scalia, President Obama nominated the man shown here, Merrick Garland. Because this is an election year, Republicans, who control the Senate right now, have said they will not act on his nomination until after this fall's election. So, I guess we'll see what happens later this fall.
The judicial branch also has the authority to check the actions of the president. This is because the judiciary can declare presidential actions to be unconstitutional. Possibly the best example of this took place during the Watergate scandal. It was discovered that President Nixon had maintained a taping system in the White House, yet the president refused to give up those tapes. In a court case named the United States versus Richard Nixon, the Supreme Court declared that President Nixon had to give up those tapes. This was a unanimous decision, and it demonstrated that this system of checks and balances really did work, because 3 of the justices who voted against Richard Nixon had actually been nominated by him. Another power the president has when it comes to checks and balances is the ability to propose legislation. When candidates run for office, they often campaign on a particular issue. In the upper left-hand corner, we see President Obama. His signature issue was a national health care reform law. President Bush, as we see below that, supported a tax cut for Americans. Historically, we've seen many different examples of this. Calvin Coolidge was president during the 1920s, and he had a slogan, "Keep cool with Coolidge." Franklin Roosevelt was president during the Great Depression, and he offered a New Deal to the American people. While presidents often propose legislation, ultimately it's up to our legislative branch to either pass or to reject it. Once a bill does become a law, it's up to our judiciary to determine its constitutionality. The judicial branch has the power of judicial review, and this is the ability to declare laws to be unconstitutional. Here we are back at this image of the Supreme Court. These 9 individuals have the ultimate authority to determine if a law violates or goes along with the Constitution. If it violates the Constitution, that law can be struck down. So far, we've looked at the 3 branches and some of the checks. I'd like to identify 3 additional checks next, as we'll complete this chart. One additional check that the president has is that if Congress passes a piece of legislation, the president has the authority to veto that proposal. However, the ultimate authority is held by the legislative branch. The legislative branch has the power to override a presidential veto. We'll see how that works next. So the president does have the authority to veto legislation. However, if the House and the Senate really want to pass it, they can vote on it again. And if at least 2/3 of the members of the House and 2/3 of the members of the Senate vote to approve that bill can become a law even without the president's approval. That's called a veto override. Another check involves the military power that the president has. The president is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States. The president can exercise this authority in a variety of ways. On the left, we see President Bush during the Iraq War, wearing a jumpsuit. On the right, we see the Situation Room, the night that President Obama authorized a group of elite forces to go after Osama bin Laden. While it's clear the president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces, there's a check on the president's ability to wage war. Congress has the sole authority to declare war. This is a famous photograph of Franklin Roosevelt addressing Congress the day after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Here, the president is asking Congress to declare war. On the right, we see the headline from the Ludington Daily News, the day the United States declared war on Japan. Throughout American history, the United States has declared war 5 times. Can you name them? The first time was during the War of 1812. And the last time was during the Second World War. I would like to identify one final check. If the president has violated the law or committed some sort of a high crime or a misdemeanor, it's the sole power of the legislative branch to impeach and possibly even remove the president from office. This is also true for members of the Judiciary. If the president's been impeached, the judicial branch also has a role. The Chief Justice would preside over any type of a presidential impeachment trial. Often there's confusion over the proper definition of the word impeachment. If you want to remove the president or a member of the Judiciary from office, there's a 2-step process. The first of those steps would be impeachment. This would mean that official charges would be brought against the president. In order to have this take place, you would need a simple majority vote in the House of Representatives. If the president has been impeached, in order to determine his guilt or innocence, there would be a trial. At the end of that trial, each individual senator would act as a juror. In order to remove the president from office, a 2/3 majority vote is needed. In the course of American history, 2 presidents have been impeached. Andrew Johnson in the 1860s and Bill Clinton in the 1990s. Both Johnson and Clinton were impeached. However, at the end of their trial, neither was removed because there was no 2/3 majority vote to remove them from office. The last concept I'd like to address today would be the fact that the Constitution is a living document. There's an amendment process that can and has been used. We've got 27 amendments to the Constitution. We'll see how that process works next. The Constitution identifies some processes for passing amendments. The most common process involves 2 steps. First, an amendment must be proposed. It's proposed by a 2/3 majority vote in both the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. The second step involves ratification. It then would need to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures. One of the last major amendments to be proposed was the Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA, in the 1970s. Simply put, this was designed to prohibit discrimination based on sex. It was proposed in both the House and the Senate, and then sent to the different states. 10 states, 20 states, 30, 35 states ratified it. But eventually, it was never ratified by enough states, so we do not have an Equal Rights Amendment to our Constitution. Maybe you would like to explore some of the factors why this never became part of the Constitution. You might want to write about it in the Canvas discussion board. Well, today I tried to address a few concepts. First, the system of separation of powers and checks and balances. This was put into place by the founders of the country in order to protect our freedom and our liberty. Lastly, I looked at the amendment process. Hopefully you found this interesting and hopefully you learned something new. Have a good day.